What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of The Real Ones. Today, I'm joined by the one and only Aman Thakkar. Aman, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're just like, what the hell happened? So guys, let me just give you some context. First of all, Aman was informed that he had to make a media appearance on The Real Ones with Joel Alexander this evening about 5 hours ago. So he's got zero prep, there's zero cues. And for context, this is probably the first time ever that anyone from Team Kendal is actually being interviewed. So
no pressure.
Well, yeah, no pressure. Live work, mate. You know what? We were supposed to do this episode with the whole team when we were doing our offsite earlier this year. Yeah. And then we just didn't find the right setup. So when everyone comes here next month, in Jan, we'll be able to do one with everyone. But you were the first one.
I know. Wow.
No pressure.
Thank you. I mean, it's a privilege. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
But yeah.
Don't know what to say. This is your first podcast ever.
This is my first podcast ever. There's a lot more cameras than I thought there would be, to be very honest with you.
I know. It's a bit of a setup, but I feel at home here, to be like, it's just.
I know.
Yeah.
You look very comfortable, I must say. You look like you're in the zone.
I'm chilling, bro. This is actually, it's been a while since I filmed an episode now. But tell me, a little bit about yourself, but I want to know, like, I guess for our audience, let me just lay it up a little bit.
Yeah.
Aman was the former youngest associate director at Foxtons, where, I know many of you can't tell his age, but he's young, and he's somehow been in real estate for north of 6 to 8 years. I don't know which is the correct.
6 years, yeah.
6 years, sorry, my research is a little bit off, but 6 years in real estate, and let's just say he's doing great for himself, to the extent where he was like, you know what, it's time to leave the comfortable London life and move over across the pond to Dubai and not become an agent, but actually become Kendal's director of sales. So, I'm so happy to have you on the team. Obviously, we've known each other for a while, but I think it's time to sort of tell people what 7-year-old Aman wanted to be.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is going to be such a boring answer.
Oh, let's go.
But 7-year-old Aman very much would have loved to become a professional football player. Absolutely.
Every big real estate person always says that.
Is it?
They're like, I want to become like a professional athlete of some sort. Even Daniel, Ben, who else? I had a bunch of people who said the same thing.
I'm glad I'm such a cliche.
You're a property guy.
I know, I really am. Do you know, I still dress like it, so yeah. I'm getting a bit of not FOMO. What's the word? Just when you miss the past, nostalgia. That's it.
That's
a bit
great.
of nostalgia. But do you know what? I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for having me. And you're right. I did leave the comforts of London.
Yes, you did.
After buying a house.
Yeah. And that's insane. Like,
which
you just
crazy.
Bought a house.
I know. Kimmy, my sister, I'm very sorry.
She said that just like, you're going to podcast, make sure you shout me out.
Yeah, fully. But yeah, do you know what? I had a great time. I started at the bottom and sort of worked my way as close to the top as a person who's this young can get, pretty much. And it was a great experience, but I wanted a new challenge, And like you said, we've known each other for a long time.
Yeah.
I've seen what you've been building, right? These last couple of years, especially the last few months.
Yeah.
And it's been so exciting. And almost as an outsider looking in, I've always wondered, what actually happens behind the scenes. And having been here, 7 days now, it has been a roller coaster, but it is exactly what I thought it would be, in the best ways possible.
Yeah, it's like a lot of getting punched in the face and then getting back up, and then you get like a Stripe notification that goes ping, and then you're just like happy again. And it's like it's just one of those things. But there's a lot of people out there today that don't know about your journey, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, youngest associate director at Foxtons at a very young age. What's the journey towards that look like? What were the conventional things that you did, and what were the non-conventional things that you did that you think others can sort of like learn from you and sort of have the same journey effectively?
Yeah, fair enough. Great question. I think I'd like to give you a bit more context.
Right.
So I'll take it back even pre-Foxtons. Finished school, and I had the option to go down the sort of standard university route, like the rest of our friends, right? And the rest of my family, to be honest. My sister was already in university in London, and I found this program called the apprenticeship, where you work and you study at the same time. Now, Aman and school never really went hand in hand.
Fair.
I was a very naughty kid.
Great.
Very naughty. That riddled with boundless energy, which has served me well the last few years, meant that it wasn't a great combination, you know? And so I realized that academia, or traditional academia, wasn't probably the best route for me. And so the practicality of the apprenticeship was you got live work experience, working a full-time job, but you also studied at the same time.
Right.
And so I realized that that was something that I think would have served me better. And looking back now, it changed the trajectory of my life, to be very honest with you. Started working and studying at the same time. It was super intense, but I made sure that, do you know what? This is a good opportunity. I can either make the most of it or coast, like I did pretty much throughout my education, my standard education. And I had a choice, and I'm glad I made the right one, or what I think was the right one, because I finished my program early, which hadn't happened before. And at 19, I was a project manager at one of the largest tech and telecom companies in the world. You know, if you told me at 19 that, and this is painting a picture, 19-year-old Aman, 18 months ago, was playing football in school. That was his passion, and that's it. Fast forward 19 months, if you said you're going to be a very well paid for 19 project manager at one of the largest companies in the world, fully qualified, I'd bite your hand off. But I'd also be very shocked. I'd be like, absolutely not. Like, I just wouldn't believe you. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And so fast forward to another sort of year in that role, I reached a bit of a ceiling. This was outside of London. And I realized, you know what? I need to move. I need to take on a new challenge.
Sure.
My mum has a bit of a connection with property. She always has done. And she said, you know what? Based on your skill set and pretty much just your personality, she felt that I'd be a good fit for the property industry. Now, me being me, I was like, Mum, let me come and join you. You know, I'll come, I'll help you, and we'll sort of take it from there. Right. And I think she knows me too well. And she said, I'm not taking you. You need to go to Foxtons. They're going to train you. They will really put you through the ringer in a great way. And to be honest, I was a bit rough around the edges still. And she said, they'll polish you. You know, they'll make you a potential diamond if you do what they say. And so the plan was to apply, see if I could get in. If I could get in, go there and just give it my best, you know, sort of go with the flow.
Right.
That did happen. Applied, got in. And I still remember my first day. Turned up. I was sat down next to what would have become my eventual manager.
Right.
And at the time, he'd been number one in the company for almost 2 years, you know. Wow. Context, number one out of 120 business development consultants, super intense floor, loud music playing, energy. I mean, really, it was a spectacle, you know. Wow. But it was a machine. I mean, that sales floor, man, wow, you know. And so I remember as well, I sat down next to him and I was like, how did you finish number one so many times? And he said, I used to work harder than the person sat next to me. And bear in mind, this is 20-year-old Aman. I was like, well, thank God I'm sat next to you. And eventually ended up, you know, sort of taking the throne and taking the crown, so to speak. And that philosophy stuck, you know, and it's something that I sort of carried through my entire career in a company like Foxtons, where I just came in, I was first in, last out every single day, worked Saturdays. I was on Sundays, I'd drive around the offices that I covered, the locations that I covered, to try and tout other agents' stock, because my whole job was to get stock onto the market. And it was
What
just,
does that mean, by the way? Like, first of all, like, I know you assume that everyone knows what that means, but
so,
let's say most of our listeners are friends who may or may not be proud of you, right? And they're watching this and they definitely don't know what stock means. So you want to just jump into that part.
absolutely. Sorry, it's my first time doing this, so still getting used to it.
Yeah.
Stock. So my job at the time was to win market share for Foxtons, right? It was to cover certain offices, become a specialist for those offices, and to essentially maximize the database and try and get as much from it as possible. And by that I mean winning listings, winning people and convincing them to come onto the market with us. That was my whole job. And so part of the job was seeing what's on the market already, the low-hanging fruit. So you didn't have to convince them to sell or rent their property. Yeah. That was already done. You just needed to convince them that you were the best person or you were the best agency to help them. Do you see what I mean? And so I'd spend my Sundays just driving around the areas that I covered, because I lived in a lot of the areas that I did cover, and so it was in my neighborhood basically. Writing down door numbers and boards saying, oh, this is on with this agent, this is on with this agent. So Monday, when I'd go into the office, first person there, I had a list of about 20, 30 people or addresses that I could cross-reference and try and reach out to and say, look, I'm here, this is how well my office is doing, when can we come and help you, or when can we get this onto the market? So that was the sort of gist of what my job was.
Gotcha. And
very quickly I'd become the team leader. We were managing about 16, 17 people, which was a decent sized operation. Most of my team was older than me as well, which was a change, and that whole philosophy of just working hard, but also adding my own twist of working smart, trying to think outside the box, and in a way getting rid of the box, know. It's like we're so used to doing things and imitating and sort of copying what's out there. I was almost like, look, we've got a wheel. People have reinvented the wheel, which is great. Let me add a gear.
Yeah.
And that's I think that's what helped me and put me in a position where, do you know what? People would have no option but to give me that choice or that opportunity, if that makes sense.
Right.
I think that alongside, and I'm pretty sure Richard Branson said this, if somebody gives you an opportunity, say yes, even if you don't know what you're doing, and just figure it out when you get there. Yeah. A small part of me was also, I think, a benefactor of that quote, where I'd get thrown in the deep end and I'd almost not give myself a choice but to do well. I was like, I've been given this opportunity, head down, focused, a bit of planning in terms of, what it is that I'm going to do to sort of get us from where we are to where we need to be.
Right.
And that alongside a bit of deluded confidence, the belief in yourself that you can do it. And I think those two work together. And it just put me in the position that I'm in today, pretty much.
Talk to me about the delusional confidence, right? Like, because you've done some crazy things. You've been here 10 days, and including weekends. And I've seen you do already very insane things. So for those of you listening and, you happen to run a brokerage, let's just say your offices might be very soon visited by Aman Thakkar, right? Because what happened was I was like, we had like 3-4 product days effectively. And we were just like, hashing out what needs to be there and like, trying to figure out what's the most useful for brokers, etc. But then we were like, it's time to get to work and time for the director of sales to director of sales.
Absolutely.
To director the sales, I guess. But your first reaction was not what I would like, because my whole thing is like, digitally, like, how do we do this, right? Like, let's say I'm going to cold DM this guy, I'm going to cold DM like 500 other people, then I'm going to LinkedIn posts like 3 times a day, and then like TikTok and Instagram once a day, and, it's going to work out, right? Yeah. And to a certain extent, the brand building part is required, and like, we've done all that kind of stuff. But your approach was so different in the sense that you were like, you know what, Joel, I've got this one meeting with this X person from my network or something like that. You went and met that person, whatever happens. And then you're like, I can go home, or I can look at the massive board right next to me, which says all of the names of the different, companies in that particular building, and notice that there's actually 6 different brokerages. What do you do next? Not proud of it.
Do a bit more research, get a bit more information about each of them.
Yeah.
Using various sources.
Yeah.
Some requiring human skill, some requiring the internet and a Wi-Fi connection.
Which you have recently acquired since coming to Dubai.
So expensive. But anyway, we'll get that's a
separate topic.
Episode 2.
Yeah.
And then I just walked into each and every office in that building.
What would you tell them? Because if I went in, they would say, "Get the hell out." Yeah.
I believe in Kendal, and I believe in our CRM, and I believe in our product, to the point where I moved country in 6 days.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Actions speak louder than words.
Right.
And from what I saw of the team and what everybody had done 6 months ago versus what you showed me 2 weeks ago, I was so impressed, and that showed me the future. It showed me the potential of what you have achieved and how incredible this team is and where it's going to go.
Yeah.
And that belief translates into every fiber of my being,
Yeah.
And what did I go in and tell them? It's less about what I told them. It's more about, firstly, what I believed. And I believed that I was going in to help them. That's it.
Right.
I believed that I was going to go there and change the way they did business for the better, for the foreseeable.
Yeah.
And that belief gave me the energy, the frequency, the power, whatever it is that you believe, right?
Yeah.
To go in and speak the way I spoke and basically say, look, I'm here to help you and I believe I can do a really good job.
Yeah.
Let's sit down. Let's talk.
And when I say let's talk, they're like, nah. I believe in the product and the team and all that, but at the same time, it's just there's a certain way that you do things. And a couple of points you mentioned, that the frequency, the energy, right? Only salespeople will understand that means something, because it's a ruthless job, right? As in, you basically, regardless of what you're selling, whether it's homes or that's tech or whatever it is,
absolutely,
it's the same thing in the sense that you're trying to get people to buy into something that works for them.
Yeah.
In most cases, I hope at least you believe in what you're selling, whoever is watching this. But the value proposition needs to be conveyed in a way that makes sense for the other person. So you're mostly trying to figure out the problem.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to figure out what is the issue that they're facing, what is that deficiency, and where can your product really help them?
Yeah.
Because realistically, there's going to be significant overlap between what they're using and what's what we're selling them.
Yeah.
There needs to be the base level features on both sides, and there's going to be some things that edge them over, right?
Correct.
But getting to that part is so tough, because there's such a big process before that where you're trying to win credibility, trust, and all this kind of stuff. But do you have a formula for how you should approach a sale? Because I know you place people into maybe different buckets, or I don't know how it works, but what's your process?
Do you know what? I think having been in the sort of sales industry this long, and don't get me wrong, there's people that have been here longer that have ended up writing books, etc., etc.
Right.
But from what I've learned so far, I could say you need to be versatile, right? There's not one formula. There's not one closing style. Do you see what I mean? Each person and each personality type receives and perceives you and information differently. And so your adaptability and your versatility as a salesperson can make or break you.
Right.
And having the option to move, having the option to be that agile and versatile means that you can almost match your closing style to a person, if that makes sense.
You see, I'm of the firm belief that you can take something from every market and understand something about different geographies where they do some things better than the other ones.
Yeah.
What parts of London state agency do you feel like Dubai can learn from?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And I might have a very controversial bunch of answers.
Let's go.
My experience of London estate agent has been mainly one firm, but I've, as you can imagine, collaborated with many different firms, larger conglomerates, boutiques, one-man bands.
Sure.
London is very structured, and they're always on time. Always. If you say 12, they'll be there at 11:55. Right?
The time. Yeah.
And time is valuable.
Yes.
Time
is the currency. Yes, like you said. Yeah.
Correct. I've, in my how many ever days I've been here, had meetings postponed by half an hour, people turning up an hour late.
Yeah.
Without, even like notifying you.
Yeah.
And it could come down to, qualifying the meeting and all of that.
Sure.
But I feel like 7 years in, I can do that. I'm asking the right questions to ensure that, they value my time and respect, the meeting. But I think that could just be a culture thing. I think the rest of it is very similar. A lot of the Dubai market has had some sort of link to the UK at some point.
Yeah.
A lot of your guests on the podcast are ex-London brokers that are now, in a way, running the Dubai market.
Yep.
And so I think that means that there's a lot of similarities as well.
Yeah.
Ultimately, how I view it is, Dubai is ever changing. It's so fast paced. Everywhere you look, you've got a new development coming up. So the market's growing, right? And in that, you will get incredible brokers, but you'll also get a lot of newer brokers entering the market. And so I think the best advice, I can give them, which I think is the difference that I can see, is like what worked for me. Work harder than the person next to you, and make sure that you're covering yourself for when the sun isn't shining as much. Because in those markets is when you're really tested, and that's when the best survive. So really make hay when the sun's shining, but set yourself up for, if/when things do change, because that is the test of a true broker.
It's cyclical, right? Like it's a cyclical sort of market. Like your interest rates go up, it becomes harder to afford a home. Like interest rates go down, it becomes easier to afford. Like these kind of things, and most things out of the control of most people, right? Like global demand impacts all of these things. People love to point at sort of Dubai and Saudi and all of these different markets and go like, oh, they did this big thing and then it didn't like go so like, whatever.
Yeah.
And it's just because we have that limelight, and because the city is like Dubai is doing insanely well, the UAE is doing insanely well. And it's all from like this sort of it runs like a company in a way, in a startup, in the sense that we have a vision 2030, vision 2040, like the region as a whole like has this growth trajectory. And sure, like markets go up and down, that's just like global, it's
that's
like
life,
a global thing, right? And people like to take a dig at this particular market because it's growing at an insane rate. And yes, we will have our tough times. And what your point about like sort of brokers needing to sort of prepare for the day where the sun isn't shining as brightly, right? I think that's such an important thing, because the way that like people are expecting laptops, for instance, right now, right? Like portal leads, they just keep coming, like, what I'm saying, as if it's just like an endless supply kind of. That's the way that people are. They don't know how good they have it, right?
Absolutely.
So I think like they don't see the other side of the world where these portal leads are literally called laptops, right?
Yeah.
That's insane. So right now they're getting thousands of leads and they're just like, oh, it's always going to be like this.
I know. They don't know what to do with it.
Yeah. And they touch that lead once and then that's it.
Yeah.
Right? Like never again, gone, lost. It's saved as WhatsApp lead on their phone or whatever the hell. And that's about it. Right. Yeah. Whereas a good agent would know that the life cycle of the lead matters so much. So, talk to me about, let's say I'm a client today of yours, right? Let's say I've never been a client of yours before, like in the context of buying a home,
correct?
Right? What is your journey with that client look like today, 3 months from now, 3 years from now, 10 years from now?
Absolutely. Good question. Sales across the board, and I mean this in an industry-wide way, as in like not just real estate, across industries. Sales is about relationships, right? You buy the person before you buy the product or service, and I truly believe that. Yeah. And so say you were a client, my focus would be on building the relationship, forming a connection, aligning myself with your goals, and that's regardless of whether you're buying, you're renting. I'm advising you on valuation prices, on what you should do with your assets. it's about building that foundation, and from there nurturing that relationship.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, a lot of the times you just have one or two touch points with the client, and then you forget about it because you've got so much coming in, you don't know what to do with it. Do you know what I mean? But I've worked in tricky markets, right? Worked through Brexit, the hung parliament, the pandemic, what was probably 3 years of not a lot of activity in the market, stamp duty holiday, which was great. But there's a lot, right? There's a lot. And so ultimately, you don't really see the value of something till you lose it. And coming back to your point, that lead and that person, that relationship, that client, you should be their partner. Being a real estate broker, you should be their partner. Do you see what I mean? You should be the person that's constantly with them, advising them, telling them, this is what you should do, this is where you should buy, this is the reason why.
Right.
And it's about nurturing that lead and about owning that relationship, not just for that one transaction, but when they want to sell, they approach you. When they want to buy a bigger house, they approach you. When they want to buy a place for their kids, they approach you.
Yeah.
Ultimately, you're the person that becomes their partner for real estate. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Ultimately, it's about nurturing that relationship and ensuring that you're there for them. Do you see what I mean?
Right. And what does that tangibly look like, right? Like, so you, are you hitting them up every few weeks and going like, hey, like, are you like, do you want valuation advice? Or is it like every 3 months you're like, oh, happy birthday. And then what is it? Like, what does it tangibly look like?
Absolutely. Do you know what? It's about being that point of contact.
Yeah.
So yes, send them a market update. If they want a valuation, go see them. No strings attached. You be that advisor for them. You be that partner for them, And it's about being quick with responses. So when they do reach out to you, you're there.
Right.
It's about giving them the correct advice. Sometimes the correct advice isn't going to benefit you.
Yep.
Do you see what I mean? Sometimes you have to tell them, actually, don't sell. Hold on because X, Y, and Z reason. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's about staying in touch and, like I said, nurturing that relationship. So yeah, wish them happy birthday, happy 1 year anniversary from buying this property off me.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. It's the small things, right, that matter. And people remember that. And so it's just, like I said, about being there. You become that point of contact. And tomorrow, when they want to transact, there's only one phone number that they're calling, and you better pick up.
No, absolutely. And, like a lot of people watching this going like, hey, basically they're talking about Kendal, they're talking about real estate, But a lot of people that are probably watching for the first time, seeing a new entrant into the market who's like, going out there hustling and things like that, they want to know about you.
Absolutely.
Right. And I've asked this I've sat across so many interesting people, and I find that this question just helps me understand them a little bit more, right? And we should have probably asked this in the interview as well, but instead of just the podcast.
It's too late now, guys.
It's too late now. No, but tell me about sort of the lowest point in your life and how you came out of it.
Wow, that is a great question. The lowest point in my life. Do you know what? I don't want to sound like a cliche.
Yeah.
But I just feel like my life's just been an upward trajectory.
And then you joined Kendal.
This is the lowest point. No, I'm joking.
Yeah.
It's tough. Do you know what? And I every day I wake up feeling immense gratitude, right? To the powers that be. God, if you're religious, or the universe, if you believe in, the laws of attraction and stuff. But I wake up with immense gratitude every single day. And I think in a way, and it's probably my mindset, I almost only focus on the good, In a job like sales, your mindset's really important. You deal with a lot of no's. You have to learn how to handle that rejection. And sometimes you almost trick yourself into believing, everything's great. And like I said, the deluded confidence.
Yeah.
There's some element of, convincing yourself that it is great and you're going to be brilliant. And so I think what that sort of ends up doing, I guess, to a person means that you only focus on the good things. So you can't really remember the bad things. I don't know. I feel like that's a bit of a cop-out.
Yeah, it is, to be honest. But like, look, it's interesting to hear your perspective, and I really do believe that you embody the whole like gratitude and like the energy, the frequency. Like you're all about that, right?
Yeah.
Like, and sometimes I wish I could have it because like I've been doing this for 3.5 years now with Kendal, formerly Crowdpad, all this kind of stuff, and
yeah,
it's hard, man. Like, and for the longest time, I was the only salesperson on the team, right? So I never had like anyone to riff with or anything like that.
Absolutely.
And Susie's going to make like a hard react reel out of this or something like that. I have no idea. But it's like you keep hearing that what you're doing is not perfect. It's not good. It's, there's something that's always lacking, and everyone has a different requirement and idea for what is, everyone, if they had a magic genie, would become a tech billionaire, apparently, right? Which is really just not the case, right? Yeah. There's so many different parts of it. And I'm not even talking about managing a team and, all this kind of stuff, but just the pure aspect of walking up to somebody being like, hey, like, you have this thing, this is what I have to fix it. And then they're like, nah, this doesn't have X, Y, Z. Like, and then the next thing you know, you're going back to your tech team and they're thinking that you're the most difficult person on planet Earth because you just always want shit. You always are demanding and you are the enemy, right? So having you here, like, I guess makes my life a little bit easier in the sense that not just in the capacity of like, obviously you're way better at sales than I am and you're like way better at closing a deal than I am, but more in the context of like, having someone to share that, the sorrows of sales.
The pain.
Yeah, the pain of sales. Oh my God.
It can get tough.
Like I remember like we were talking this morning just like about like, it's not just like, because we're not just machines, right? Like we got other components of our life as well that we are always juggling.
Absolutely.
And it's like this machine needs to be kicking because life is always throwing shit at you from your like, all sorts of personal fronts.
Absolutely.
But like, you need to kill this, right? Like to make momentum go through like all the other engines that you've got going on.
Yeah.
So I think I feel really lucky that you're part of the team, and also broadly like to have someone who knows what they're doing in the context of not just real estate but also in the context of like people, right? Understanding people. I think that's where we got lucky. So. To anyone watching this who like obviously like saw that move and like just thinks that it just happened all of a sudden, I would say it's two people that admire each other who've been looking from afar going like, what, there's something about that guy that is slightly different than what I'm seeing around me. Finally throwing in the hat together and going like, what, let's do this, right? Let's actually go and rip.
Let's go to the moon.
Yeah,
let's go to the moon.
Let's go to the freaking moon.
Well, Joe, you weren't going to join Foxtons, so we had a choice, right?
No, to be fair, I wouldn't join any like brokerage. I just don't have what it takes, guys. Like, you guys are at another level, But my final question to you is, my final question to you is, what advice would you give your 21-year-old self?
Great. You're full of good questions today, aren't you?
You see why I don't need my notes?
I know you guys, he's doing this with 0 notes.
Yeah.
Like, he said, how he said he told me 5 hours ago. He also decided 5 hours ago and he has been with me the whole day meeting clients. Like,
so no prep time.
I know, 0 prep. I'm impressed. Advice to my 21-year-old self. The hard work was worth it. So keep going. That's the advice I'd give myself. If I could go back in time, all the days that I'd questioned, why am I in the office first in and why am I the last guy every single day? Why is it difficult? Why am I going through this? I'd say it's worth it because it feels like I've made it, but it also feels like it's just started. And I think that's a very exciting place to be. And if it wasn't for the sacrifices I made as a 21-year-old, working hard, etc., we wouldn't be here.
Damn, I almost feel the need to stand up and clap. You know what I'm saying? But Aman, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on this episode of The Real Ones. I have to say this is probably not going to be your last feature, unfortunately. I don't know if you hate this or love this setup, but like it's just what you're going to have to deal with. There's a lot more. Aman's used to not necessarily having to be on camera per se for work, and now he's on camera every single day. It's just the business. It's just a line of work.
Do you know what? I decided when I joined this company, I'm going to make sure my barber buys a property every 6 months.
Fair enough.
And so
the frequency has gone from weekly to daily now.
Every 3 days. No, I'm joking.
Let's go. Anyways, it's been an absolute pleasure, Aman. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for jumping on the Kendal rocket ship. Absolutely. And we'll see you on the moon.
Thank you so much. And yes, we will see you on the moon.
Absolutely. And to everyone watching, come back next week for yet another episode with yet another phenomenal guest. And yeah, thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to subscribe. You don't have to cut that part. Just leave it in there.
No, guys, seriously, subscribe.